we're back. I'm Eric, and today we're going to be working on the E46 as usual. In this video, we're going to be tackling something that I personally have been dreading for a long time. And that is my Ducktail spoiler. Now, this thing has been on the car for a little over 2 years now. And it simply started out as a creative way to hide a dent that the previous owner had caused. Now, however, it has just become an eyesore, and we're going to be tackling that in this video. So the plan is to get the spoiler finished in the shape that we want. We're going to be doing that by using foam and fiberglass. Then, once it looks the way we want, we take the carbon fiber roll that's on its way, and we use that to make a fully carbon fiber trunk with the spoiler built into it. Now, just a disclaimer, I've never actually worked with carbon fiber, never dealt with it, never done anything with it. So I have absolutely no idea how this is gonna come out. But if it does work, then there are a ton of other things that I have in mind when it comes to working with carbon fiber. Plenty of things that we can do. But first, let's get this spoiler fixed. Alrighty, so this is what it looks like now. So the plan is, for the trunk, I've already ordered a roll of carbon fiber weave. It's 5 foot by 30 foot, which should give us plenty to make this carbon fiber. Pretty much gonna just put down some quick release onto the trunk and onto the spoiler, lay down the carbon fiber, put some epoxy over top of it, 3 or 4 layers of carbon fiber later, and the top of it should be stiff enough to be used as a trunk. And so this spoiler that we're using is going to be embedded into the new trunk, which is going to help with weight. But before we can do any of that, we first have to get the spoiler in a good enough condition and position to be able to lay down the carbon fiber, because any imperfection now is going to show on it. So we're going to have to clean it up. We're going to have to put down some more seafoam, and you guys will see that process, kind of how we got to where we're at now. I'm just going to be redoing that, but for the backside. We need to address the gap between the actual trunk and where the spoiler comes out, because if we were to just stop it right here, you know, we would have this big old lip. So we can't do that. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some foam. This is actually the dent that I was talking about into the trunk. So we're gonna have to fill this all up with foam. We'll have to cut it down, sand it, and you guys are about to see that process. So this is after about an hour and a half of it sitting. It's hardened up a little bit. You know, it's not as squishy as it was, and it's not sticky. This is what it looks like now. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna take a knife and I'm going to start to shape it up a little bit. You know, it is onto the spoiler, which isn't really what we want. So I'm gonna start to shape it up a little bit. You guys will kind of see, you know, what we're going for. All right, so I want to show you guys where I'm at with it right now. What I went ahead and did is I went and used a box cutter and pretty much cut it to shape. And then I've been using my Dremel. To slowly go in, you know, and get that curvature right down to the trunk. I've been doing it a lot on this side, not as much on this side, but you can kind of see the Dremel line, you know, where I just went through, and I'm taking some of this, the bulk of the middle of it out. Now, another thing that's been helping me is just a little can. This is a can of some bug spray. And so I took some 80 grit sandpaper, wrapped it around. So I've been hitting it like that. And so that's what's actually giving it, you know, the little curve, the little curvature look that we're going for. Getting the shape I wanted for the spoiler took forever. That's why there's so much sanding involved. I didn't want to bore you guys with a 20-minute time lapse, but there was a lot of sanding. That's one of the reasons that this project has taken me so long. But I did go ahead and clean up the top of the spoiler a little bit. Also went ahead and put some Bondo and some body filler on top of the spoiler, where I knew you would be able to see those imperfections through the carbon fiber weave. So I went ahead and cleaned that up, as well as the transition from spoiler to trunk. I want it to be as seamless as possible. That way it looks like the spoiler was meant for the trunk itself. I also went through and made a spot for the new BMW logo that goes on the trunk. However, you will see that I don't end up using that, and that is going to be something I will fix once the fiberglass is done. So I did clean up the back, and I also went through and taped off everything that we are going to be using from this trunk onto the new trunk. So that includes the little grab handle in the middle, as well as the tail lights that stick into the trunk. What's going on? So it's been a few days since last time I've actually worked on the E46 spoiler, and I've kind of just sped up the process. And so I just want to get you guys quickly up to date as far as, what I've been doing to get the spoiler where we need it to be before putting down the carbon fiber. Did a few things off camera just because I don't want the video to be a whole bunch of just time lapses of me getting this thing in place. So I'm kind of skipping ahead to that. But for anybody who's following along, anybody that does want to do this, I do want to at least give you a rundown on what I've been doing. Bam, so that is mostly complete Ducktail spoiler. I did speed through the process. I didn't want it to be an hour worth of time lapses. Like I said, I've been working on this for so long. This project has taken me so long. I started it actually almost 2 years ago. I'm just not the biggest bodywork guy. There's so much sanding, so much shaping and stuff like that involved. So it's definitely taught me a lot, but that is one of the reasons this has taken me so long. And so like I said, it's mostly done. As far as the back, now I know it looks rough just because of all the different colors, the different little seam lines that you guys can see. However, that is smooth to the touch. Like I don't feel any difference, maybe right here a little bit, which I'll go back over. But for the most part, we've got the shape that we want. We've got the curve that goes seamlessly down to the trunk. Now, where the spoiler used to end, as you guys saw, it was a pretty pronounced little gap between where the trunk was and where the spoiler actually ended. There was no way I was going to get it perfectly, down there unless I cut even higher into the trunk, and I did not want to do that. As far as the sides go, this side does stick out more. Like this whole thing is just, I don't know if you can see. So the trunk is here, and the trunk would usually go, here and then down. However, this side comes all the way out. If you come over here on this side, this one kind of follows it a little bit better, except for like this little corner. Visually, it looks pretty good. I do like, you guys can see it, like the way it comes up in the middle, and then there's like some little horns, over here on the edge. I do like it, but it makes the spoiler look a lot higher than it actually is. And I'm sure you guys are seeing it in reverse because I'm using my front camera, but it makes the trunk like super high compared to, you know, where it normally was. So I mean, you guys can see just how high, you know, the spoiler makes the car look. And I'm sure it will look different. I think what's giving it that illusion is just the contrast between the colors. So I think, you know, once it was all one color, I don't think it would come up nearly as much. But the biggest thing for me was if somebody's driving behind me, you know, I wanted to make sure it looked level. Honestly, I like it. I think it looks good. I think, you know, just the angles of it. And if I were to zoom away, kind of show you guys, it's really going to make the car look super aggressive. That along with the M3 bumper. And then once we get, you know, the quarter panels figured out, you know, making sure there's no gap or anything like that, I think the car is really gonna make a difference. Let me know what you guys think. If you guys would have done a different, you know, style design down in the comments. I personally like it. This is the shape that we're gonna end up going with. The only thing I have to do now is really just touch up, you know, a few of these areas where I can feel it. But for the most part, if it's something super duper small, you know, like this little chip right here, I don't think after 3 layers of carbon fiber going on top of this, I don't think they're gonna show. You know, I'm also going to reinforce it, you know, where there's a potential for crack, there's more stress on the actual part, such as inside of the trunk. So for example, right here, once I take this trunk off of the, you know, off of the car, so like this whole section from here to pretty much here, I'm gonna have to put 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, however many layers to reinforce this part. So there you have it. So that is pretty much where we're at, you know, outside of starting the whole carbon fiber process. That's where we're at in terms of the shape. That's what we're gonna end up going with. Like I said, I like it. You know, it may not be everybody's taste. It may look a little weird to some people. You know, it is what it is. Everybody's got their own opinion, but that's what we're going with. As soon as the carbon fiber gets here, we're gonna go ahead and start that process, and gonna have a fully carbon fiber trunk. So in terms of the trunk, as you guys know, I've been working on this, been trying to get the shape, trying to get everything, you know, pretty much cleaned up so that once we get the carbon fiber in, you know, we can go ahead and start that process of making the mold. So I am going to go that route. I'm going to make the mold for the top section, and then also in the inside, I'm going to make that as well. So a few issues that's been happening. If you guys saw my previous video, I explained I'm down in Florida now. There's only a few times throughout the month where I get to come back up to Tennessee and work on this. So some of the issues that's going on with the trunk, because it has been sitting for the last few weeks. So one of them is like this spot. When it rains, water has been getting in here and it's causing some high spots. Second thing is this little flab right here, as I explained before. So the way that the trunk line would follow is it would come down like right here. And so this whole section is just foam and it overhangs on the spoiler, whereas this one does not. It follows it a little bit better. If you zoom out, you guys can kind of see the difference. You know, we've got this one hanging out quite a bit versus this one. So I'm contemplating just completely cutting this side off. But then the issue with that is I would have to adjust the top because I wanted the high point in the middle, and then I wanted it to rise a little bit on the corners, make it look more aggressive, more square. So if I cut this off, that's going to affect the actual top length. So I went through with the permanent Sharpie, or with the marker, went through and marked off a few of the spots that definitely have either some low spots or there's some chipping, really where it's just not flush. And as you guys may be able to see from all the black lines on here, it's actually quite a bit. Now I know it looks kind of like a mess just because we've got different colors. We've got fiberglass showing on different spots. We've got body filler stood on here. We've got Sharpie lines. I know it looks like a mess, but this actually helps me understand, you know, where these problem areas are. Obviously the corners over here, I knew were going to be an issue because, you know, trying to fill in body filler into a perfect point is very difficult. And also, you know, some of these known problem areas such as this, and this just helps me visualize it a little bit better. And then in some of these smaller ones, I don't know if you guys can see that. So these are just like little chips. Really, some of this little red like pinhole filler. I believe this will work just fine on these. But in terms of like some of the bigger ones, you know, some stuff like this, where it's just really deep in there, or like this, where I'm actually having to go through and, you know, fix this little angle because it's kind of squished in here. I'm not sure what happened here. Or even some like this where, you know, the body filler is just not all the way at the perfect point. So all of these are going to have to be tackled before we actually can, you know, move forward to the next step. So I did want to show you guys just a quick update in terms of the rear spoiler. So I have been working on it pretty consistently. Well, a few spots that the sanding wasn't too friendly on, such as here. And this was one of the things I was talking about when it comes to, you know, leaving this thing for weeks on end and then coming back. Always end up with some extra problem to deal with. Did make the irrational decision to go ahead and fix up this little corner piece. It just stuck out way too far. And then this was also like really brittle because it was just fiberglass. I just shaped fiberglass, epoxied it. So there was nothing behind it. And so that also led to this just not being stuck to the actual spoiler. So I went through, cut this off because this whole thing was just loose, still a little loose here. Contemplating cutting it all the way, but what I have here is the actual shape on this side. So if I put this up to the car, took a Sharpie just to try to get the exact same shape. Now I'm going to cut this out. I'm going to spin it around and get a rough idea of what it's going to look like on this side. Alrighty, so this is what we're left with. If I take this, put this right up against here, you guys can see, so that's pretty much the shape that we have on this side. I didn't actually like the shape on this side as much as I did on this side. However, just the unevenness really was getting to me. So if I take this on this side, put it here, get a rough idea where it's going to be. Now, the only problem with this is the end up here sticks out a lot further. So I'm thinking I'm just going to bring it down to where this point starts, and then I'll just bring it back into here. So it'll be more like, and then in. It's still not going to be perfect, but it'll be a little bit more uniform. So let's see what we can do. Now, this isn't something I actually wanted to do. I didn't want to have to go through and cut all this out. I didn't mind the shape of it. I didn't mind the unevenness. It made it look pretty unique. But again, I just can't help but thinking I'm driving down the road and then someone gets behind me and it's just going to look uneven. So I didn't like that, didn't like the idea of that. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing fixed, get some foam on it, and we should be good to go. All right, I want to show you guys. So this is what it looks like after the modeling clay, honestly give myself an A for effort. I've never actually worked with modeling clay before, you know, other than the other spots on the spoiler. But in terms of filling up something this large or doing something in this large with the modeling clay, not too mad at it. The only thing throwing it off from what you guys can see is, I believe, going to be this little angle right here. So this was the difficult part that I was explaining. I can't touch this because of the height, so I can't touch the top of the spoiler, but then I also have to bring it down and then get the corner piece pretty much even. So I can either leave it down here where the edge just comes in, it comes in a little bit and then comes back out, or I can just bring this down, you know, straight down and then dip it in and just let it, you know, kind of piggyback off this curve right here. Now you guys can't see it actually, but here's the template. I do have the template, and then I have this piece of cardboard in here. So this piece of cardboard is just keeping it up, you know, off from sagging down underneath the trunk. But I did shape it based off of the other side over here. So this should give you a pretty good indication of what it'll look like, you know, when it's done. But right now we're just going for the shape. So I'm happy with that. Again, give myself an A for effort. Not a big experienced person in modeling clay. Like I said, the only other time I've ever used that is the other parts of the trunk. I'm thinking I'm gonna go through with the modeling clay and try to get those touched up a little bit, such as the edge over here. It's a little dull looking, not as sharp as I'd want. I'm gonna let this dry with the little bit of daylight that we have left. Let this dry up as much as possible. I'll check it periodically, come out here, maybe try to sand it a little bit, get it into shape just a little bit. My only concern with it is that it's gonna fall. I've already done it here, and then I also had it kind of on the point that I was saying I'm gonna try to do it again. But when I put it on here, it actually fell off when I was sanding it. So that's my concern with the other side, is when I, you know, go to actually start moving this, playing with this a little bit, it's going to just fall off. So I'm out here sanding. It's 6 in the morning, trying to squeeze as much time in on the spoiler as possible. Now I am out here sanding on it. I'm using some 60 grit. I'm trying to get it down to its absolute, smoothest surface, or at least its most shaped surface. So that way I can then go from the 60 to 100 grit, and then I can just continue to go up until it's absolutely smooth. And then I'll put down some primer, and then I would just go back through, wet sand some of the high spots. Now I did want to show you guys one thing. So there are parts on the spoiler itself where you can see, bits of the fiberglass sticking through. So what I'm having to do is I'm going through and I'm just feeling along the edges, just feeling along to see where it's not smooth. And you guys may have seen a few clips where it was a little wavy. It's not perfect. I do not expect it to be perfect. However, I do want it to be, as close to perfect as possible. Now, these high spots on the fiberglass, that's not from, obviously there's no body filler on top of that, so it's not from body filler. It's simply the underneath foam that I used. It just was not 100% even when I started throwing down the fiberglass, and then I put body filler on top of that. So it's not gonna be perfect. I don't expect it to be perfect. It's a DIY Ducktail spoiler. So I am getting it down still pretty good. I am having to sand through the fiberglass. Now, it's not something I really want to do, but I am willing to do it just because I know we're nearing completion on this. The carbon fiber did come in. So right now it's just a matter of getting this thing as smooth as we can. Now there are still high spots. I'm trying to see if you guys can see just kind of how wavy it is on this side. This is also the side where I had to deal with, you know, the end bit. Now I've got that looking relatively good. I do have to go through, put some more body filler on it, shape it up a little bit more, but we are nearing the end of the actual like work of it. So I've been out here working nonstop on the spoiler. It's coming together pretty well, pretty nicely. It may not look that way, but it is getting really smooth. It's starting to take shape. Now, one thing I did want to show you guys. So in terms of the edges, I'm putting body filler back here because I want, you know, when we put the carbon fiber on, it needs to be pretty smooth and seamless because the carbon fiber will be on the inside as well. We're doing both sides, and then we'll pressure those, pretty much sandwich those two together. Now, I do need to go through here and clean up all this overhang in terms of the spoiler, and then I'm gonna put a little more body filler up in here where there's some cracking. And then on this side still needs quite a bit of work, but this is actually the side that I had to end up cut off. Now it is a little soft up here, so it's a little soft, a little malleable compared to the other side, just because I didn't put fiberglass over the foam. I just put body filler. And then on this side as well, so making that seam, I'll just have to go through here, sand this, clean it up a little bit. It is looking pretty good. It's coming together really nicely. I'll show you guys the top really quick. It's starting to come together. It's really smooth. It's just a few different colors. Here in just a little bit, I am going to mask everything off. Windshield, the bumper, you know, the lights, everything like that. Get everything off the trunk, and then we are going to prime it. I'm gonna prime it so that way it's all one uniform color, and then I should be able to see any imperfection. Now it's not gonna be perfect. We already know that, you know, don't expect it to be perfect. However, I do want it to be as close to, you know, factory or as if it came from the factory. I want it to be as close to that as possible. So I'm gonna continue to work on this. Once we are ready, I'm gonna show you guys the process of masking everything off and then priming everything, and we're just one step closer. you guys, so as you just saw, I have laid down the final layer of primer on this thing, and man, I gotta say, it is really starting to come together. I'm gonna show you guys a few things that I have noticed as I've laid down the primer, but as of right now, honestly, it looks good. It being one solid color definitely cleans it up a lot. A lot of those imperfections that, you know, I saw while sanding, things like that, they are now gone, because again, I did use a filler primer. So I just needed some of the pinholes, some of the small imperfections. I just needed those gone. It didn't fill everything up. So let me show you. This is what it looks like. Now there are still a few wet spots. I'm not gonna touch it or anything like that, but I will show you just some of the issues that I'm having. And some of the things that I've noticed while laying down the primer. So again, it's not perfect. Do not expect it to be perfect. All right, so what the primer essentially did, as you can see some of the wet spots, but what the primer essentially did was it brought to light a lot of the imperfections. So you guys can see this whole corner, this whole side over here, which I was already having issues with, you know, water, little wavy, things like that. So it really just brought those things to light. Let's see. Yeah, so it brought some of the common issues. It brought some of the things that I knew were already a problem. It brought those to light, but then what it did is it masked everything that was not a problem. So any issue that, you know, looks fine, it was smooth before, it really just hid everything that was not an issue at all, which is great. Does not want to stick to the clay that I put down on there. That's the modeling clay. I'm glad I ended up not going with it over here in this corner. Does look pretty good. It being one solid color cleans it up a lot. Alrighty, you guys, so we are nearing the end on the spoiler. I am super happy, super excited for it. Now there are a few things that I do need to do. In terms of shaping, the last thing I'm going to have to do is just go through, as you guys saw, I put body filler around the logo. We're going to give this a nice little shape here, and I'm also going to have some shaping here. So that's the last thing that's needed for shaping wise of the spoiler. It's in a pretty good shape. I do like it. I did get this corner fixed pretty well. So we're gonna go with this shape. Outside of that, I am adding quite a bit of body filler here. This side became a little flat. You probably saw that while I was priming it. This side was flat, this side's more of a roundish shape, and I do like this side more. So I'm putting a whole bunch of body filler here to get this sticking out where I can sand it to more of a roundish shape. Outside of that, everything else left to do is filling in little pinholes that are on it. So some of the little areas right here, they just need a little bit of body filler. Once we are done with that, the spoiler's gonna look great. I think it's gonna come out really, really nice once I'm able to pull that carbon fiber out of the mold. You know, it's gonna start to make sense why this video has taken so long. Actually, some of the earlier clips from this video were shot over a year ago, and then even some of the earlier ones before that were 2 years ago. So this has been a super long process in the making, but again, I think it's going to be worth it. Once I start the carbon fiber process and I pull that first part of the trunk out of the mold, I think it's going to make everything worth it. I think it's going to be exciting. Not to mention it is also going to save quite a bit of weight, because with all this body filler, foam, everything that's on the spoiler, this thing is heavy. Like, I mean, just holding it, it's heavy. Trying to lift it up from here is heavy. So it's going to save a lot of weight. It's going to be practical. I'm hoping that the lip, like, you know, it's pretty pronounced lip that we've got going on. I'm hoping that that'll also provide some aerodynamic benefits to it. You know, less drag, things like that. But we will see. We've got a whole bunch of different plans for it. Right now, I'm just going to continue to sand, body filler, sand, continue that process. And I'm going to skip ahead. You guys don't need to see that. It's already been 40 minutes of that same thing. So, and we're going to start the carbon fiber.